What if the secret to true wealth isn't in your bank account, but in an ancient principle? A 3,000-year-old Jewish idea that, when truly understood, can transform not just your finances, but your entire life. I'm not talking about some magic prayer or a secret incantation. I'm talking about a profound shift in consciousness, a quiet revolution in the soul that I personally discovered after decades of chasing the conventional dream of success. For over 30 years, I was the very embodiment of that dream. I built and sold businesses, navigated the turbulent cycles of the market, and amassed a level of material success that most people would call wealth. But at the zenith of my external achievements, I found myself in a state of profound spiritual poverty, a gnawing emptiness that no amount of zeros in a bank account could fill. I remember one specific evening, sitting alone in my large, quiet house after celebrating a successful business acquisition. The house was full of expensive things, but I was utterly empty. The relentless chase had led to burnout, anxiety, and a hollow sense of victory. That's when I turned to the wisdom of my heritage, immersing myself in the rich tapestry of Jewish philosophical thought, not as an academic pursuit, but as a desperate search for a truth that resonated beyond the balance sheet. What I am going to share with you today is a practical guide to what I call conscious creation, a way to stop chasing the illusion of wealth and instead become a conscious creator of a life of true, effortless abundance. One that is not only financially sound, but also rich in peace and purpose. Now, let's talk about the modern wealth trap. This is the endless hamster wheel that many people find themselves on, a cycle of striving that is often exhausting and unfulfilling. Have you ever felt that no matter how much you earn, it's never quite enough? That the moment you reach one financial milestone, your mind immediately creates another, higher one to chase. This is the illusion I lived in for decades. I remember a specific moment in my early 50s after we had just closed a major deal. I should have been ecstatic. Instead, I found myself in a state of profound anxiety, already thinking about the next deal, the next acquisition, the next thing to chase. My mind was so fixated on what I didn't have that I was completely blind to the blessings right in front of me. My healthy children, the comfort of my home, the simple joy of a good meal with my wife. This relentless pursuit is often driven by a societal script that tells us wealth is an external destination, a number in an account, a title, a bigger house. We're conditioned to believe that more is always better and that our self-worth is directly tied to our net worth. But Jewish wisdom teaches us something radically different. It turns the entire paradigm on its head, suggesting that true abundance is an internal state, a mindset, and a way of being. Without this inner foundation, any amount of external success will simply amplify your existing anxieties and insecurities, leaving you feeling just as empty, or perhaps even more so. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes. It's a futile and exhausting exercise. You pour more and more in, but the leaks remain, and you're left perpetually empty. This brings me to the profound Jewish principle that transformed my life. The Talmud asks a simple yet earth-shattering question: who is rich? The answer isn't a person with a large inheritance, a booming business, or a portfolio of real estate. The answer, in its elegant simplicity, is one who is happy with their lot. This isn't a passive statement about resignation, it's an active and ethical imperative. It means to cultivate a deep, abiding sense of gratitude and contentment for what you have right now. It's an internal posture of abundance, a conscious decision to focus on the fullness of your life rather than its perceived emptiness. For decades, I had been focusing on the more, the next dollar, the next deal, the next goal. But this principle taught me to focus on the enough. I learned that being truly wealthy is not about acquiring things, but about recognizing the immense value of what you already possess. I remember a conversation I had with an older man, a quiet and gentle soul named Mr. Schwartz, who ran a small dry cleaning business in my neighborhood. He never drove a fancy car or took extravagant vacations, but he radiated a sense of peace that I couldn't understand. When I asked him his secret, he simply said, "Solomon, I have everything I need: a loving family, a roof over my head, and work that gives me a sense of purpose. What more could a man ask for?" He wasn't rich by my definition at the time, but he was a king, living a life of true wealth. This is the difference between having a lot of money and being a lot of money. The principle of being happy with your lot is about recognizing that abundance is not something you acquire. It is a spiritual state of being that you choose to inhabit regardless of your external circumstances. It's the ultimate freedom from the tyranny of the endless chase. So how do we practically apply this ancient wisdom in our daily lives? It begins with a shift in focus from frantic doing to intentional being. I've found that one of the most powerful exercises is a daily gratitude practice, but not in the superficial way you might think. I'm not talking about just listing things you're thankful for. I'm talking about a deep sensory experience of gratitude, a quiet, mindful moment where you truly inhabit the present. Every morning I take a few minutes to truly feel the warmth of my coffee cup in my hands, to appreciate the simple miracle of clean water, to listen to the birds outside my window, and to feel the solid ground beneath my feet. It's an act of noticing the small, constant blessings that are always present, but often ignored in the chase for bigger, better, and more. A patient of mine, a driven executive named Margaret, was struggling with burnout despite her immense success. I suggested she start a 5-cents gratitude practice. Every day she would find one thing to appreciate with each of her 5 senses. The taste of her morning tea, the sound of her favorite song, the sight of a tree outside her window, the feel of her sweater, and the smell of fresh air. Within weeks, she began to feel a profound change. She was still a high achiever, but her work became more joyful and less frantic. In my own business life, this principle of contentment translated into focusing on the value we were creating, not just the profit we were making. It changed how I interacted with my team, my clients, and even my competitors. I remember a moment when a competitor's business was struggling, and instead of seeing an opportunity to pounce, I felt a genuine sense of empathy. I reached out to the owner not to acquire his business, but to offer some guidance and support. That act of kindness, born from a sense of true abundance, led to a collaboration that was far more profitable and meaningful than any acquisition would have been. This principle teaches us that true wealth comes not from what we take, but from what we are able to give. My personal transformation wasn't a single event. It was a gradual awakening, a quiet revolution in my soul that took place over years of quiet study and rigorous self-application. I had spent so much of my life in a state of high alert, driven by the fear of failure and the constant need to prove myself. This state of constant stress, the body's fight-or-flight response, is not conducive to creative flow or true abundance. In fact, it actively blocks it. I began to realize that all my frantic doing was actually blocking me from receiving the very blessings I was chasing. I remember a particularly stressful period where I was trying to force a business deal to happen with a large, stubborn client. I was pushing, calling, strategizing relentlessly, and everything was hitting a wall. The client was unresponsive, the negotiations were stalled, and I felt a profound sense of spiritual exhaustion. In a quiet moment of reflection, I turned to the Jewish concept of bitachon, which is often translated as trust or faith. It's the idea of trusting that the universe has a plan and that your job is not to force things into being, but to show up and do your part with integrity and then let go of the outcome. It's the spiritual understanding that while you must take action, the ultimate results are not entirely within your control. In that moment of deep quiet, I consciously surrendered the outcome of that deal. I stopped calling. I stopped worrying. I simply did the next right thing and trusted that whatever was meant to be, would be. A week later, the client called me back, and the deal went through, but on even better terms than I had originally hoped for. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a direct result of shifting from a posture of fear and scarcity to one of trust and abundance, from frantic effort to effortless flow. The key takeaway here is to understand that true abundance isn't a prize you win at the end of a long. It is the very ground you stand on. It's an internal state that you can cultivate right now, regardless of your external. It's the difference between chasing wealth, which is an external pursuit, and becoming a conscious creator of wealth, which is an internal When you stop looking for fulfillment in the next acquisition, the next promotion, or the next number, you free up a tremendous and emotional energy that can be channeled into creative flow, meaningful connections, and a deep sense of. Have you ever truly considered how much of your daily energy is spent worrying about what you. The late-night anxiety, the mental calculations, the ceaseless comparisons. Imagine for a moment what you could create if you redirected just a fraction of that energy into gratitude, presence, and intentional. When you operate from a place of enough, your decisions are no longer driven by fear and scarcity, but by wisdom. The wisdom of our ancestors teaches us that the greatest riches are found not in what we acquire, but in the person we become. We are not simply vessels for wealth, we are meant to be channels of blessing, and that begins with an abundant. If this message resonates with you, I encourage you to join. This is just the beginning of exploring the deep well of Jewish wisdom and its profound practical applications. I'll be sharing more teachings on how to cultivate a life of true abundance, spiritual freedom, and unshaken. The world needs more people who are not just successful, but truly at peace and we have to be the change. So, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel and hitting that bell icon so you don't miss any of our future. Your support not only helps me, but it also helps to create a community of people who are committed to living a more intentional. Now, I want to ask you a question that I hope will begin a new, transformative conversation for you. What is your personal definition? What does a life of abundance truly look like to you, beyond the numbers and the external? Is it peace of mind, a deep sense of purpose, loving relationships? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be reading them. Your insights not only help me to understand your journey, but they also help this entire community grow in wisdom and if you are ready to dive even deeper into these kinds of ideas, from the wisdom of the prophets to the practical insights of Maimonides, I've linked a video below that I believe will be a powerful. It's on a similar topic and continues this journey of conscious creation. Thank you for joining me today. May your life be filled with abundant blessings and an unshaken